All right, I see that we're live. Excellent.
The After a bit of technical difficulty on my end, Lauren, thank you so much.
You're welcome. I'm excited to be here. This is my actual first LinkedIn Live I've ever done, believe it or not.
They can go smoother. It's just when I use the wrong login that turns out to be the problem.
Hazard of being a founder, you have multiple logins.
Tell me about it. Hey, so I maybe we should start off instead of going into introductions. Why don't we just start right into? I read your book this week, and I wanted to tell you how much I loved it.
Well, number one, I was floored to learn that you read my book. I did not expect that. I was prepared to give you the Cliff's Notes version of the book, but wow, I am really honored, and thank you for taking the time, and thanks for reaching out and having me as your guest today.
Yeah. Well, I appreciated that you made the time because, frankly, I think there were a bunch of themes in your book, and I'd be curious that I think are just broadly applicable for anybody who wants to be in a senior executive position. And that got me really excited. And then also very specifically, like the just the angle that you had of trying to get this type of information out to more women in tech. I felt passionate about that, and Maggie felt very, very passionate about that, and we wanted to be part of that in some tiny little way. So thanks.
You are most welcome.
One thing that I really noticed about your book, I just kind of wanted to loop back to it. It felt very broadly applicable. I mean, it's so much of the stuff in there that I got was career advice that I've gotten as a male, and that I got in my 30s, that I got in my early 40s, and now stuff that I think about a lot in my late 40s. And it was like a good reminder of, oh wait, I need to be doing some of these things. So I found it to be very called gender neutral. It just struck me that was one of the first things that I noticed about the book. I'd be curious to get your take.
That is the biggest compliment that I could possibly get from you, that you with your esteemed career found value in the book. Not or unsurprisingly, I actually hear that a lot when I go and I speak. I market to women in tech, but who actually shows up to my keynotes and who actually reads my book are both men and women, and non-binary individuals alike. I market to women in tech because that's who I am. And I didn't feel like I could tell, like men or anyone else, like, here's what you should do in your career. So I just started with where I'm at. And what happens in practice is a lot of people have found that it resonates with them, and that it's generally applicable advice on how do you start over, which was what I did. And then no matter where you're starting, how do you build your value? And ultimately, the way you build your value is by becoming indispensable at work, and in your general network as well. And that's been a message that I found has resonated, and I'm launching something new, and it's going in the gender neutral direction.
I want to come back to that because I think the points that you made around be invaluable in your network, there was such a positive message in there. But before we get to that, I wanted to ask, tell me about the start, because I mean, obviously, like I read the introduction and chapter one, but I'm curious to see if you would just talk a little bit about the genesis story. What led you to writing the book, and then, well, let me just start there. What led you to writing the book in the first place?
So the book came after my really popular keynote. And let me go back to the origin of DevelopHer. I started DevelopHer because I was tired of seeing women in tech represented by people who weren't actually technical. My background is I write code. I'm now an engineering director at a unicorn Silicon Valley fintech company. And just didn't have role models of women who were CISOs, CTOs, VPs of engineering. I mean, Sheryl Sandberg is phenomenal for what she's done for women in the workforce, but she's in an operations role and has an economics degree, which I couldn't relate to. Where are the only women in the room? And so I didn't think anyone would care about my story. And so I actually started a podcast without knowing anything about how to do a podcast, and started by telling other women's stories. I cold called CTOs, VPs of engineering, and CISOs. And then I got a call right after I launched, and they said, hey, could you entertain over lunch? Do you have a story? And I pitched them the idea of how I had started over in tech at the time, 6 years before. And 2 years later, I was top of field. and found out that I was underpaid, and how I went out, grounded myself in data because I was an engineer, learned how to negotiate, and tripled my salary in just 2 short years. And that difference I made was a six-figure amount. So I went from entertaining over lunch to giving the opening keynote, gave a presentation that was met with a standing ovation, which has never happened since. And they invited me back the year later and said, "Hey, do you have any more stories?" And I said, "Well, it's hard to beat how do you make more money?" But there's the story of how I graduated from Duke with a triple major in electrical engineering, computer science, and economics, top major, top honors. Pursued a career in finance afterwards, so I'd actually left tech, and then through a series of poor career and life decisions, ended up working unemployed and working for $9 an hour just to make ends meet in 2011, 14 years ago, and had to start all over and only got one yes. And it was 90 days to prove myself and teach myself iOS. And this was back in 2011 when iOS was new. And through what I outline, in the book, and we'll talk about today, within 2 years, I was top of field. My work was featured in Apple's groundbreaking iOS 7 keynote, and that was my app next to Facebook on the big screen. And I was one of 100 tech innovators who was flown on a private 747 jet from San Francisco to London to present to the United Nations at the UKGA Innovation Conference. And I was regularly fielding calls from FANG and Silicon Valley companies living at home in Dallas before remote work was even a thing. And so that actually was more popular than how do you make more money, if you can believe it or not. And so I got bored during the pandemic and I said, I'll sit down and make this a book. And that's how the book came about.
Oh, that's really cool. I mean, the ups and downs in your story to me are the things that I find to be so incredibly fascinating, because it's something that a lot of people, I feel like, who have had impressive careers, they kind of like smudge over some of the other parts. And I think that your like complete bluntness and frankness makes it more real to me, because we've all had big ups and big downs and then big ups again. And I don't know, it just resonated with me a lot.
Thank you. I found I am very authentic. My team will tell you that my org that I lead and my day job, in addition to developer, I work full time on the front lines of tech. I work remotely for a Silicon Valley fintech unicorn, where I'm the director of engineering, currently on the path to be promoted to senior director, which is exciting. So when I talk about getting promoted, this is exactly what I'm working through right now. This will be my third promotion that I'm working towards. And I am authentic about the challenges that I've faced and what I have gotten the feedback on, because I listen to feedback, and I think that's really important to listen to feedback. And I've gotten the feedback that being authentic really is what resonates the most with people. And talking about how my triple major did nothing for me, but maybe open a door, but didn't get me the job. And then the setbacks that I faced, but most importantly, not that I was set back, but how I responded to those setbacks and the changes that I had to make to better myself. And one of the things I share, right out of college, I was an investment banker. And at the time, it was get good grades, do good, and you advance in life. And that was the playbook that I lived by. And I learned the valuable lesson as a young 23-year-old with bright eyes that doing good work alone is not enough to get ahead. And they told me that, yeah, you did great work, but you're not ranked as a top analyst because not enough people in our New York City headquarters office knew who I was and the great work that I did. And that was an expensive lesson to learn, because it left tens of thousands of dollars in year-end bonus on the table, but it changed the trajectory of my life forever, because I have focused on my network and making sure that I'm visible, and that key decision makers and stakeholders and people who have influence in my career know about what I'm doing. And even in a down market, I'm still getting approached about new positions because I've done that.
This to me is something that I've seen so many times. And for me also, it was a very kind of specific moment for me career-wise, when it was the what got you here won't get you there.
Yes.
And what got me here was the working very, very, very hard, just throwing myself at the work and making sure that my body of work was really, really strong. But to your point, like I was really bad at advertising the work to the people around me. I was really bad at, I always thought it was like playing politics, like doing favors for people and then asking for favors in return. And it was only after I got through that that I realized actually there's a whole nother world to this work thing that I guess is kind of a computer geek I just hadn't seen. And I didn't recognize how important it was. That for me was a big turning point in my career. And I'm curious if you could like double click a little. I don't want to ask you to like repeat chapter what I think it was six,
Oh, no,
seven, and eight.
great.
But,
Happy to dig in.
I'm curious to see how do you discuss this? Especially, actually, I'd be really curious. Do you find how do you discuss this first? And then I'd be really curious. Do you find discussing it with mid-career men is different from discussing it with mid-career women?
So it's actually not along gender lines that I experience pushback. It's around extrovert versus introvert.
Mm-hmm.
And what a lot of people are surprised to learn, especially when I reveal this up on a very large stage, which is typically when I share it, I'm an introvert. I up until about my senior year of college or graduating college, I was a wallflower. I mean, just quiet, super reserved. I mean, I was shy as could be. And then I learned the powerful lesson that I had to have people know who I was. And I remember, I don't remember the title of the book. I really wish I did because that would be fun to be able to look back. But I read a book on networking on a flight from Dallas to Atlanta to learn how to network. And I've put it to practice in over 15 years. I have a network on LinkedIn, an audience of almost 15,000 global network connections across the globe and really strong network here in the States as well. And I'm an introvert. So I get the most pushback not from gender lines, but instead from introvert, ambivert, extrovert. Uh, and the surprise that a lot of people think, well, I'm not an extrovert like you. And I'm like, hey, I'm an introvert. Like I'm about to leave the stage. I'll do a little bit of meet and greet, and then I'm hightailing it back to my hotel room because I need to recharge my batteries and have some alone time.
On every kind of personality test I've ever done, I'm also pretty the same, very far over on the introvert side of the spectrum. And I remember I was actually having this conversation with this person we were recruiting about 3 weeks ago, and I said, "So run one is only going to be one step in your career journey. What's the step after that?" And I remember her saying, "She's like, well, I've always had this idea of starting my own company, but I'm an introvert, so I don't know if I'm well suited for that." And my immediate reply was, well, I don't know that like Bill Gates would consider himself a whole lot of an extrovert either, or like Mark Zuckerberg, I guess, or like I mean, I guess I'm a little older, so I was like, actually, I've got a couple friends, like the entire management team of Sun Microsystems, like there wasn't a single extrovert there, like not even their VP of sales. So I'm like, it seems to me like you're in pretty good company here. In fact, I think you're in the majority.
Yes. These skills can be the good news is these skills are not natural for some people, but they absolutely can be learned and even mastered.
I think I mentioned, one of my professors that I really love was with Jeff Pfeffer, that book that I mentioned right before we turned this thing on. And I remember so well his kind of core thing was, if you're an analytical person, you can apply your analytical skills to being, I like your words, but much better than his in this, by the way, being an invaluable part of your network. But you just have to turn an analytical eye towards it. How can you be valuable to people around you? And that for me was, I thought it was about being popular. And he was like, don't be silly.
Oh, there's a strategy to everything.
Yep.
And that's the analytical part that I apply, just like you said, is I come in, what I talk about in the book and my keynote is I apply a 3 commitment process to building my network. And it's real simple. Got to show up, meet 3 people, then I can hightail it out of there. And I'll tell you, I did that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just have to show up one more time. And that's how I built an almost 15,000 person strong network and growing by I'm a huge fan of the Japanese methodology Kaizen about small incremental change. And look, I've not only gotten it in my career, going through multiple career transformations. I've retooled 3 or 4 different times. I've been promoted multiple times. I've even lost 110 pounds using small commitments. So like, this isn't like only for your career or only for your network. Small commitments paired with consistency, which is the number one thing I want you to take from my book is that like small, consistent action with a bias towards action compounds into incredible results over time. And I've achieved it in almost every area of my life.
And when you apply that to kind of your own personal network, I'm curious, just for the folks here who are called early to mid career, uh, can you dig a little bit deeper? You mentioned the rule of three thing, and I was kind of hoping that you could go into that just a little bit more for the folks who don't.
Absolutely. So it terrified me to walk into an event here in where I live in Dallas, or any other, even a work meeting where I don't know anyone. It's terrifying, especially for an introvert, to walk in and you don't know anyone. So I told myself, look, you don't have to stay the whole time. You just have to, number one, show up, and I celebrate that as a win. Two, I would make a point to meet three new people. I didn't have to meet and stick around for an hour or 2 hours, just long enough to meet three new people and get their contact information. And then I just had to, and then I could leave, and then I just have to show up one more time. And that's what I did. And then I started showing up at events, and I started recognizing people. So it became easier to walk into an event because I'd recognize people. And then how something started happening that I didn't expect. I would walk in, and not only would I recognize people, but people would recognize me. And that caught me off guard. And so instead of me having to go up to talk to people, people started approaching me, which was, it flipped the bit. It was a game changer, which was fantastic. I stopped having to do a lot of work, and then they were introducing me to other people, and I just sat back and let it happen. And then, I started joking that I couldn't get in the front door without someone coming up, and other people were just as nervous that they wouldn't know someone. So when they recognized me, I didn't have to do any work. And then it got so bad that I couldn't make it out of the valet line at some places without someone being like, Lauren. I mean, because look, you're not alone in being nervous that you won't know anyone. Other people are in the same boat. And that's why when they recognize you, a lot of times you don't have to do any work. And that's why it's important that you have your an up-to-date profile picture on LinkedIn and, Google Team or Slack. When I joined my current company a little over 8 years ago, I joined, and I didn't do a video call, and I didn't meet in person until 3 weeks in. And I showed up at the office, and I was really surprised when someone came up to me and addressed me by name. And I was shocked. And thankfully, I asked them a critical question. I said, like, how in the world did you know who I am? Like, I'm new, and everyone here knows everyone else. Like, how did you know who I am? He goes, oh, well, I recognized you from your Slack profile picture. So, like, something super small like that, have a picture that looks like you, because that's how people are going to recognize you. And something like that could be the difference between being part of the in crowd and belonging, and having people talk to you, or not getting networked in.
I'm really curious. One thing that I loved um, about some of the things you said in the book and here, and actually some of your more recent LinkedIn posts that I thought were great, that like your very, very, very pragmatic advice. And one thing that really caught my eye was telling other people about your work. There are a few bits and pieces that you had there and stuff that you've written that I've always found it very difficult to talk about my work with other people because it feels like showing off or bragging. And yet when other people talk about their work with me, I'm fascinated, and it never to me sounds like they're showing off or bragging. I'm just like, they're passionate about it, and that passion shows through. I'm curious to see when you think about like showing your work to other people and coaching people to, especially kind of mid-career folks, to show off their work a little bit more. How do you coach people into that?
So it is a process of getting that, of building the muscle where you're confident enough to do it on a regular basis. Now I post regularly, at least once a week, if not more times. But I didn't start that way. And I'm coaching one client right now. She's a senior in college, and she's not quite ready to do thought leadership, but we're just working on outreach. So it is a process, and it's a continuum where everyone falls somewhere different. And it's a muscle. You build confidence in doing this by practicing it. So you start with showing sharing a group project that you're proud about and talking about we. And then eventually you build towards something that you individually did or that you're proud of. And I mean, you don't want to be braggadocious or anything like that. No one likes that. But just, I'm very, you nailed it. I'm pragmatic. I ground myself in data. When you state facts, like no one can argue with that. And I typically go with I'm honored or something like that. Uh, that that is an authentic way. I think people see authenticity, and resonate with that.
Now, I mean, we couldn't be doing we couldn't be doing a show like this these days without at least touching on AI. And it does bring me. I was talking actually with an old mentee of mine. I mean, we were just talking a couple of weeks ago, but this is somebody that I worked with 15 years ago, and he was saying it's fascinating for him now as kind of a very senior engineer that showing the work used to be, hey, the work is in my pull request. You know, especially for somebody who's in this case like extraordinarily introverted and doesn't actually want to go an executive route. But he was saying something fascinating. He's like, hey, in this world of AI, I can do what I thought was an amazing pull request, and nobody thinks it's me. They just think that I happen to prompt a little bit better than the folks around me. And all of a sudden, the mechanism that I used to use when I entered into a new organization of getting famous by doing really incredible, I mean, his coding aesthetic is gorgeous. He's like, nobody cares anymore. And the landscape has completely changed. We had this conversation right as he was entering a new organization. I'm curious to see what you think on, like, how is AI changing the game here for developers, early career, mid-career developers, when it comes to showing the work that they do to the people around them?
Yeah. So you said it before in this live. The rules of the game have changed. What got you here is not going to get you there. And the number one thing is if you're not leaning into AI, you're going to be left behind. That is the absolute way that everything is leaning, not just with, coding tools like Cursor and other Copilot, but also with ChatGPT and other AI tools. Like it is not a extra bump to your productivity. It is like 100% difference, if not more. And you have to read the room and figure out what are permissible ways to use it. But it's not fancy code anymore. It's how much can you get done? How more effective can you be? And those are the new measures of quality and output.
I mean, I'm amazed even for me with my small team now, and when I talk with former peers that are running much larger teams, like I'm, thanks to Cursor, frankly, like I'm coding again in a very, very, very big and material way, because it's almost like putting together a prototype is just as fast as writing up a document, is writing up a slide, as doing the 5 or 6 meetings that it used to take to get a little bit of momentum around a new idea. If I spent, instead of 5 or 6 meetings, if I spend 5 or 6 hours with Cursor, I have a fully working prototype that I can start showing people. Yeah. And if they like it, it catches fire.
Absolutely. Seeing is believing. Gone are the days of a PRD or a product brief that describes it in the same amount of time. Even product managers can build prototypes to show off what they're looking and put that hands in users, and you can fail a lot quicker and validate good ideas to really double down and harden.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing to watch. It's like, I feel like it's like watching the world when PowerPoint came out. Like, okay, there's a new way of communicating, and this is
exactly.
The way.
Or when we moved from functional programming to object-oriented or waterfall to agile. We're going through a business transformation right now where it's a paradigm shift. It's not just a new tool that we're using. It is totally reframing the game.
And speaking of reframing the game, I didn't want to let it end without you talking a little bit about your next project, because I saw on LinkedIn your post that you have 2 new projects, but one of them I'm particularly curious about, and I wanted to hear from you.
One is a little bit under the wraps. I'll actually talk. I'll do a special little Easter egg. I'll tell you about both. So DevelopHer has been successful, but I actually have a lot of men show up and lean into it and take advantage of the platform. So I am launching LaurenHasson.com for keynote speaking on high performance, leadership, workforce transformation. If you contact me, I also do one-on-one coaching as well, for men and women, and anyone who wants to really level up and go to the next level and learn from someone who's not only done it in her own tech career, but helped thousands at this point do that. And then the one that is super top secret is I am bringing executive level career strategies to high school and college students and helping parents, generally high achieving parents who have invested in this kind of transformation themselves, to help their students build their brand and thought leadership and craft their story and get tangible hands-on skills to get into top STEAM university programs and then launch high-paying STEAM careers. So that's what I'm working on, and I am, for the first time in 8 years, rolling out one-on-one coaching is kind of the headline. So if you want to level up and are prepared to make an investment in yourself, you can now work with me one-on-one. And those websites are launching in the next by the end of April.
I mean, I may be signing up soon. I'm just saying, as the product of between grad school and then following after that 12 years of coaching. I mean, I put maybe money like the equivalent of like a down payment on like a nice house now into both my coaching and my follow-on education.
No, actually, that's a really good point. So it's what I end my keynote on, and it's the last and final chapter in my book. And then I don't see it as like a down payment on a house. Like, well, I guess this is similar, but I don't see investing in myself as an expense. I view myself as an asset. And to be honest, over the last 14, 20 years, I've invested easily 6 figures in coaching and bettering myself. And that sounds like a lot of money until you hear about how much I've made in return. And it's high 7 figures.
Yeah.
And that is like at least a 10 to 50 times return on investment. And my only regret looking back is that I didn't invest in myself sooner. Is every single coach I have hired, I wish I had found them sooner and had invested at a higher level than I initially engaged.
Yeah, I mean, if I could give your coaching and coaching in general a bit of a plug, I remember very well my prior startup, a board member who was a very, very close friend, but a tough love kind of close friend, said, Kyle, it's time for you to get a career coach like now, not like not like soon, like tomorrow.
Yes.
I remember we kind of went back and forth on it. And so I did. First, I started paying it out of my own pocket and said, look, Bill, this is just getting too expensive for me. And so it was a board meeting 6 months later where I kind of mentioned this to him on the side of the board meeting. And during the board meeting, he actually brought up specifically as a topic. And he said, okay, so the company's going to start paying for Kyle's coaching. And I felt extraordinarily sheepish about it. I mean, really, really put on the spot and yada, yada. And literally the entire board says that's the best ROI that we've heard so far.
Absolutely. Yes.
A little bit about where I was operating before the coaching sessions.
The right person is going to think about the return on investment and finding the right coach who's going to really accelerate the progress to their goal. But I have never once had a company pay for my professional development. I have not had a mentor or a sponsor to show me the way. When I couldn't afford to invest in myself, I went to the library and I rented books or checked out books. And now I fund this all myself. And like, why wouldn't I? Like, I know the value of having a coach who's achieved the results come alongside me and short circuit the learning process. Absolutely.
I'm a huge, gigantic fan of it. Hey, one last question before.
All right.
Before we lose time, if you were going to give advice to your younger self, what would it be?
Invest in a coach sooner than later. The sooner you learn these strategies of how to become visible, how to network, how to build your value and to short circuit that, the sooner you're going to be able, like, you're just going to climb the ladder that much faster. You're going to be more valuable. You're going to earn more, learn how to negotiate. I do salary. That's actually what I started with DevelopHer, is salary negotiation training, but figure that out. The soft skills, I made the mistake in thinking that the hard skills, mastering the technical skills were what were going to advance me. And I was surprised to learn that it was actually the soft skills that really grew my skills to the next level. And if I can leave you with a quote that changed my life, it was a slide I've shared it out several times a year on LinkedIn because it made a big impact. And it said it's from the Carnegie Institute. It said, surprisingly, 85% of your financial success is not due to technical skill, but your ability to communicate, negotiate, and lead. Only 15% is due to your technical skill. And I said, okay, if this is research and data backed, I'm going to lean into the soft skills. And because I leaned into the soft skills, changed my life in ways I could have never imagined.
Yeah. Oh, Nate. Lauren, thank you so much. We really appreciate this. For everybody who's tuning in, we will be back again next month. We're just scheduling in, and I just want to say thanks for listening in. Thanks again, Lauren.